right, so last week I talked to you guys about vampires and werewolves in Middle-earth. So let's talk about Sauron and how he took a form of a vampire. So there were these early drafts of the Silmarillion, the Lost Tales and the Laelethian. If you haven't read those, you have to. Sauron is described as this master shapeshifter. He could appear as a great wolf, a serpent, and a monstrous vampire rat. After he was defeated by Huan and Luthien during the Beren and Luthien tale, Sauron fled Tol in Garoth, and Tolkien wrote that he escaped in the form of a vampire. He was dripping blood from his throat upon the trees. But this isn't a vampire in the blood-drinking Dracula sense. It's more symbolic of him being wounded and spirit-like, taking on this terrifying bat form. The blood dripping imagery, it reinforced this corruption and the horror tone of that passage. So what was the connection to Thorin-Wethil? Some of scholars, they suggest that Thorin-Wethil, the vampire messenger that we talked about last week, might be an extension or servant of Sauron's own power. Both are linked with this bat-like shadowy form, and both emphasized his dominion over the creatures of the night. What were the limits of his shape-shifting? After Numenor's downfall, Tolkien implied that Sauron lost a lot of his ability. By the Third Age, what we see in The War of the Ring, he can no longer change his shape at will. He's locked in this form and unable to appear as anything else. The vampire form was kind of like a relic of his earlier, freer days of sorcery. Tolkien's Sauron as a vampire is deeply gothic. He was a spiritual being manifesting this huge bat, fleeing in humiliation. Kind of shows how flexible Tolkien was in myth, pulling from some European vampire lore, but shaped it into his own mythology of corrupted Maya and shapeshifters. So just picture it. Sauron, who was once this proud lieutenant of Morgoth, he was fleeing his fortress. He wasn't in armor, but he was this disgusting, grotesque vampire. His wings were beating in desperation, and blood was dripping through the trees as he vanished into the night. So this was kind of like some horror that Tolkien wove into Middle-earth, which I find very interesting, very fitting for the Halloween season. It shows how much Tolkien put into his universe that you just don't see out there.